Let's get started.
सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। शान्ति शान्ति शान्ति। श्री गीता ध्यान। ओम पाठाय
प्रतिबोधितां भगवता
नारायणेन मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीं तत्त्वामनुसन्धयामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणीम्। नमोऽस्तु ते व्यासविशालबुद्धे पुल्लारविन्दायतपत्रनेत्रा येन त्वया भारततैलपूर्णः प्रज्वालितो ज्ञानमयप्रदीपः प्रपन्नपारिजाताय स्तोत्रवैत्रेकपाणये ज्ञानमुद्राय कृष्णाय गीतामृतदुहे नमः। सर्वोपनिषदो गावो दोग्धा गोपालनन्दना पार्थो वत्सः सुधीर्भोक्ता दुग्धं गीतामृतं महत्। वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुं। भीष्मद्रोणतटा जयद्रथजला गान्धारनीलोत्पला शल्यग्राहवती कृतेन वहनी कर्णेन वेलाकुला अश्वत्थामविकर्णघोरमकरा दुर्योधनावर्तिनी सोऽपीर्णा खलु पाण्डवैरननदी कैवर्तककेशवः पाराशर्यवचः सरोजममलं गीतार्थगन्धोत्कटं नानाख्यानककेसरं हरिकथा सम्बोधनाभूदितम् लोके सज्जन षट्परैरहरः पेटीयमानं मुदा भूयात् भारत पंकजं कलिमलप्रध्वंसि श्रेयसे। मूकं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयति गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे परमानन्दमाधवम्। यं वरुणेन्द्ररुद्रमरुतः स्तुन्वन्ति दिव्यैस्तवैः वेदैः साङ्गपदक्रमोपनिषदैः गायन्ति यं सामगाः। ध्यानावस्थिततद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनो यस्यान्तं न विदुःसुरासुरगणा देवाय तस्मै नमः। देवाय तस्मै नमः। देवाय तस्मै नमः।
Hari Om. So Bhagwan will say in today's satsang, actually, you know, that our samsara is dukkhalayam. And earlier this week, you know, we were all, me and my family were kind of, and some very close friends were submerged into dukkha when we lost Srinivasan Sheshadri, who is, a member of our satsang actually. He was very regularly attending and participating. A number of you would remember him and have seen him. And he also gave us a lot of smiles. I know for one that Upasana, whenever his screen switched on, she used to start smiling. He had that capability. Earlier than that, a couple of days before, we also lost Uncle Daljit Singh, who is Geetanjali, who is attending our satsang, her father. I know Daljit uncle really well. I've known him as a sure person, and who calm, equipoised. When we in Bhagavad Gita talk about equipoise, you should have seen him, that equipoise was very, very apparent and very self-reliant. I used to admire him and think he lived up to his second half of his 90s. And, I always thought that if I lived that long, I should be as self-reliant as Daljit uncle. And Srinivasan Mama, my Mama, I called him Papu Mama, and amazing human being, very, very extremely knowledgeable. He's a walking, talking encyclopedia, knew anything under any subject. He would engage in a conversation with people on any topic whatsoever, whatever was the theme of the day, right from modern politics to traditional old politics to history to Bhagavad Gita to the, Bhagavatam to all kinds of spiritual text, everything and anything under the blue sky, he had immediate, knowledge that would come out. And also wit, along with that. Not only that, he would engage with all straight off people. It didn't matter who it was, right? From somebody who was delivering tea or something to him to, probably if he met a chief minister or prime minister, he would engage with the same wit and humor. An unbelievable human being. More a friend to me than an uncle. I never showed any regard to him of his being uncle. Always, all the time, I was brash with him. And he allowed me to be that way. So I'm a fantastic human being. We all remember him. I'm dedicating this satsang to Daljit uncle and to my Mama Srinivasan ji. And this is for them. And so appropriate, chapter 8. And in chapter 8, the kind of topics and verses that we have been going through. It's amazing. And the last 3 weeks, Srinivasan ji, my Mama ji, attended from the hospital. And I know that the last 2 weeks, actually, he was in a very, very exhausted kind of a state, but still he was very keen. Anyway, so given all this, right, how do my loved ones and I attain Salokya? We saw last week what Salokya is, that Loka of our Ishta Devata. How do we attain that? That's a question that keeps coming up to us all the time. How do my loved ones and I attain Samipya? How can I sit next to Bhagwan in the Loka, in Brahma Loka, sit next to him, have breakfast with him, take a selfie with him, sit quietly and meditate with him? How can I do all of that? These are thoughts, or just be with Bhagwan in his presence. Samipya. How can I do that? Without fail, we wish that the soul must rest in peace. And we recite, Trayambakam yajamahe sugandhim pushtivardhanam urvarakam eva bandhanat mrityor mukshir mamata. We also recite Shantakaram bhujaga sayanam Padmanabham suresham Vishwadharam gagana sadrisham Meghavarnam subhangam Lakshmi kantam kamalanayanam yogi hridyana gamyam Vande Vishnum bhavabhayaharam sarvalokaikanatam. A universal wish for us and the departed souls to find eternal peace. And Bhagavan's answer to that is a method in which Bhagavan says you should live life. And the two gentlemen we spoke of today, exemplary in terms of the way they live their life. And Bhagavan says, Tasmad sarveshu kaleshu ma manusmara yudhyacha. In every moment of your life, remember me and perform your duties. And he also says, Ananyas chetas satatam yomam smarati nityasaha. Remember me daily, constantly, with the mind not thinking about anything else. And when one does that, Bhagavan says, Mamevashyasya samshayam. To me alone, you shall come without a doubt. And he says, tasyaham sulabha partha. For such a seeker, O Partha, I am easily attainable. Let us talk a bit about habit and schedules, because we human beings are slaves to habit and slave to our schedules. See, habits are made by repeated thoughts and actions performed consciously. See, a habit by itself is not conscious. It just happens. But does it really just like that happen? A smoker lighting yet another cigarette. My Mamaji used to do that for a number of years. I used to tell him, stop this. Sometimes I feel probably his lungs were a little weak because of that years of smoking. Automatically, by force of habit, lighting a cigarette. Tendulkar, you executing that perfect, impeccable straight drive. It just comes naturally to him, like force of habit. Shankar Mahadevan launching into that breathless song every now and then, without any effort at all, and completing it in one breath. My mother cooking up a huge feast effortlessly. We all used to wonder, even till today, that it just happens in no time. There is a lot of conscious effort that goes in the background to enable any of this. The thought or thoughts that cause a habit is conscious thought. In fact, my Guruji says, habitual perfection is a product of conscious effort. The busiest people, how much ever busy we may be, can find time for God. Because you don't have to find time for God. We just saw that last time. He should be a pervasive presence. But is he not? He is a pervasive presence. Then why am I saying he should be a pervasive presence? He is. He pervades everything. Even when we are not thinking about him, he pervades. We should be conscious about him while we are busy in our lives. That is what Bhagavan taught us last time, in our last satsang. How can we be conscious? How can we do whatever we are doing, thinking about him all the time? But a very easy excuse, how can I, what are you talking? Do you even know how my life is? I spin like a top. I don't even know. It's morning and then I'm spinning and suddenly it's night. I'm exhausted. I need to go to sleep. And you're saying, think about God. It's impossible. It's like crazy. Life is so busy doing what we are doing. See, we had Mother's Day recently. Okay, and there was this picture in WhatsApp, which was quite beautiful. I thought I circulated that to everyone, if I wished them, And that had a baby getting a shot. Like nowadays, everyone is getting injection, no shot. So there was a baby getting a shot and wide-eyed, smiling at the doctor. And the mother is cringing, as if it's paining her. A beautiful depiction. See, we need a Mother's Day to remember our mother. Imagine if a mother needed a Child's Day to remember her child. How would it be? Every moment of the mother is for the child. Whatever she's doing, she's spinning. We can say we are spinning like a top. You don't know. The mother is spinning like a top, actually. But every moment is for the child. While she's spinning like the top. The thought of her baby pervades through her mind all the time. And she doesn't pause every moment. Hey, my child, this is for you. I made some milk for you. Oh, this I'm getting up for you. I'm sitting down for you. No, she just does what she does. But the baby pervades through. It's natural. Similarly, giving oneself to God would result in offering every action to Bhagavan. Every moment is for God because we have offered ourselves to him. And then suddenly, when there is a pause, when the spinning slows down a little bit, when we can take a deep breath, that time, we will be like, oh God, or we will be like, thank you, Krishna, Dhanyavad, or we'll be like, hey Ram, how are you, buddy? That thought, in that pause, Bhagavan will naturally come to mind. If one takes remembering him as work, as a task, as something to do, then it's like, oh my God, I have to do this work. Oh, I have to sit in my prayer. I have to visit temple. I forgot to visit the temple today. Sometimes the temple is a room in the house itself. But no, I didn't go to the temple. God remembering Bhagwan is not our job. It's not a job. It is joy. And if that becomes joy, then Ma Manusmara Yudhyacha. This will be our sadhana for this chapter. This Ma Manusmara Yudhyacha, this aspect of habit that we spoke about, that is the aspect of love for Bhagwan. Another method that Bhagwan has taught us is Abhyasa Yoga Yuktena, by scheduling the practice of meditation. Human beings don't normally miss something that is scheduled, which is what is there in their calendar and gives an alarm. Nowadays, the smartphone is quite handy in that sense. In today's world, we often hear people saying, let me check my calendar and confirm to you. Schedule time for spiritual practice is what Bhagwan is also telling us when he says Abhyasa Yoga Yuktena. But on the contrary, what happens is we start missing. Look, oh, I forgot to go to the temple today. I didn't have time to go and say my prayer today. So we start missing the spiritual practice. And that essentially, gets into our habit, routine, or habit, whatever you call it. But on the contrary, if we start missing the spiritual practice, then it shows progress. So one is missing the spiritual practice, the other is missing the spiritual practice. Okay, one is letting it go, the other is yearning for it. That kind of missing. Then it shows progress. We can miss our satsang because we are busy. We can miss our morning prayers because we are busy. Or Wednesday onwards, we can start thinking, hey, the next satsang Saturday, these chapters, hopefully, maybe I should read it up a little bit once before the satsang. That kind of missing. Then it shows progress. In fact, Srinivasanji, my uncle, initially he told me, I will see. I told him that I'm doing this satsang. I think my mother told him, I didn't tell him. And he said, yeah, if time permits, I will come. I will see. But after some time, he was like, he used to adjust everything else to this, for this. Right up till the last satsang, he was in his last bed. And exhausted, but he was there. Like exercise, we have given this exercise example oftentimes. Initially, we find it lethargic to get out of the bed. But after some time, if you are used to exercise, we find it lethargic if we have not worked out, if we have not burnt out calories. So if we make that part of our schedule, then it shows spiritual progress. When this happens, we find the time, whatever it may be, we find it. And then in that time, when we find the time, Bhagavan says, Chetasa Nanya Gamina. The mind does not wander towards anything else. Stay focused. Chitta Ekagratha. Single pointed focus. And then Bhagavan also gives us a method of how we should meditate upon him. He lists out his qualities. Kavim Puranam Manushasitaram Anoraniyam Samanushmaredyaha Sarvasya Dhataram Achintya Rupam Aditya Varnam Tamasah Parastat. So the various qualities of Bhagavan he lists out. And then he says, knowing these qualities, meditating upon these qualities, how? Bhaktya Yukto, full of devotion to Bhagavan, absorbed in devotion. And Yoga Balena, with the power of meditation, with the power of yoga. And then he says, Sarvadvarani Samyamya, having controlled all the gates, all the apertures, the sense organs are all apertures, having controlled all of them. Manohriddhi Nirudhya, confining the mind to the heart, taking it to your core, not the pumping organ, to the core. Heart here is your core. Murdhyatyatmana pranam, drawing the prana into the murdhni, the head. Omityekaksharam brahma. Omityekaksharam brahma what? Vyaharan, uttering the one syllabled om. He says, Mamanusmaran, remember me. And that way he says, Yati Paramam Gatim, attain the supreme goal. That person who does this attains the supreme goal. And for what kind of seeker am I easy to attain? One who remembers me, Smarati. And he gives three aspects of remembering Bhagavan. Ananya Cheta Smarati, the mind being focused on me at all times. Satatam Smarati, constantly remembering him through the actions which we just discussed. Nitya Smarati, always remembering. In fact, in the last satsang, when I spoke about Ananya, Cheta, Satatam and Nitya, I forgot to add the word Smarati. I corrected it in my notes. So please take note of that. So Smarati or remembering comes with all three. Remembering him with mind focused on him. Remembering him constantly through our duties, through our actions, whatever we may be doing, and always remembering. Thus, Bhagavan presents fundamentally two kinds of people who, with the goal of, remember, all of this starts for the people who have liberation as the goal. With the goal of liberation, remember him. Mamanusmara. One kind of people are those who remember him while going about their duties at all times. And the other kind of people are those who remember him with the power of yoga, infused with bhakti, focusing the mind and chanting Om. And in that manner, people attain him, the one who has liberation as the goal. And what after they attain him? What is the benefit? That we will see in verse 15.
Mamupetya punarjanma
Mamupetya punarjanma
Dukkhalayam ashashvatam
Dukkhalayam ashashvatam
Napnuvanti mahatmanaha
Napnuvanti mahatmanaha
Samsiddhim paramam gataha
Samsiddhim paramam gataha.
Amupetya punarjanma Dukkhalayam ashashvatam Napnuvanti mahatmanaha Samsiddhim paramam gataha.
So Bhagavan says Upetya. Upetya mam. Mam Upetya is actually Upetya mam. Having attained me. Upetya mam. Mahatmanaha. Who? The great souls, the Mahatmas. They having attained me. Napnu vanti. They do not get. What? Punarjanma. Which is rebirth. These Mahatmas, having obtained me, do not get rebirth. And he says, Ashashvatam, this non-eternal, non-permanent, ephemeral, Dukkhalayam, the abode of sorrow, where we all are, the samsara. Because if you get rebirth, you get into this impermanent abode of sorrow. And he says, on the contrary, samsiddhim paramam gataha. Samsiddhim, perfection, the perfect state, the highest paramam, gataha, they reach. They gain the ultimate liberation. Having attained me, these Mahatmas, they do not get rebirth, which is nothing but non-eternal abode of sorrows, as they get ultimate liberation. To the people who are philosophically thoughtful, this is important here, rebirth is the starting point of all pains and imperfections. We say, no, Janam, or there are so many sayings, let me not get on a tangent right now, right? But to the one who is not as philosophically inclined also, trials and tribulations come on top of their head. They present themselves to be dealt with. So either you are proactively aware of the pains and imperfections of the world, or you will reactively respond or react to the trials and tribulations that come on top of your head. The philosophically inclined are proactive. Those who are not are reactive or responsive. That is what it is. That's a fact. We see that all through our life. And Sri Krishna says in this verse that rebirth is the abode of sorrow, temporary, ephemeral. That is what he's pointing out, which we experience in life anyway. The return to samsara, this rebirth, that depends on the collective balance, like a bank balance we have, collective balance of papa and punya, sin and peace. And we saw what that is, the disturbed mind is papa, the calm, equipoised mind is punya. This collective bank is referred to as sanchita. Sanchita means collection. And in contrast to rebirth, the state of ultimate liberation is that of permanent relaxation for the soul. And Bhagavan says that if the soul has reached me, Mamupetya, for that great soul, the Mahatma, there is no rebirth. They reach the state of supreme liberation. Samsiddhim paramam gataha. See, if a human being's deepest mind and intellect, my deep mind and intellect, gets attached to an object that appears in one's dream, okay, what happens? We get repeated dreams of that same object when that happens. It keeps repeating in our dreams. However, more often than not, just as when one awakens, they have no relationship or no connection with that object in the dream or with the dream itself. There is no connection. Similarly, when one gets awakened, quote unquote, awakened to the supreme consciousness, to that supreme, the ego drops. Like the thought of that object in the dream drops, here the ego drops, the individuality drops, and the soul reaches Brahmaloka, the highest among the manifested worlds. And from there attains permanent liberation. Explaining further, Bhagavan now discusses the nature of return or punarjanma. See, Bhagavan is very thorough. He just does make a statement and leave. He now explains it further. The nature of this return. From verses 16 to 19, he talks about this punarjanma. And the aspect of non-return or ultimate liberation or moksha is dealt with in verses 20 and 21. So let's go through them one by one. We'll now go to verse 16.
Abrahma bhuvana lokaha
Abrahma bhuvana lokaha
punaravartinorjuna
punaravartinorjuna
mamupetya tu kaunteya
mamupetya tu kaunteya
punarjanmana vidyate
punarjanmana vidyate.
Abrahma bhuvana lokaha punaravartinorjuna mamupetya tu kaunteya punarjanmana vidyate.
Lokaha, lokaha, the realm of experiences. It comes from the word look, the root, the Sanskrit word root look, not the English look. That means to see, to experience. Bhagavan is referring to all the major realms. We saw that earlier, right? Atala, Vitala, Sutala, Rasala, Tala, Talatala, Mahatala, Patala, the lower realms. And then Bhu, Bhuvaha, Suvaha, Mahaha, Janaha, Tapaha, and Satyam, the higher, 7 higher worlds. There are many other worlds, but these are the main ones. And Bhagavan says, he uses the word including. In Sanskrit, the word has two interpretations. One is up to, up till, and the other, which is the till that limit, and the other is including that limit. The former is grammatically referred to as Maryada, and the latter is grammatically referred to as Abhividdhi. So imagine, a nice example that depicts is, imagine buying a parcel of land and you're standing on, a vantage point and inspecting that land. And you ask the agent that, up to what point is this land extends? And the agent will say, sir, do you see that line of coconut trees? That is the limit. And the immediate question is, including that limit or up to that limit? So that here, Bhagavan is saying, including what? Brahma Bhuvanal Lokaha. All the worlds, including Brahma Loka. That's what Bhagavan is saying here. And what does he say about them? Punaravartinorjuna. After visiting these lokas, one has to come back. One has to return. So different planes of experience and existence are known as worlds or loka. For example, when we talked about mother and child, when we are in the womb of the mother, that's a Garbha Loka. Right? Then we went through childhood or infanthood and then childhood. All these are lokas, by the way. Various sub-lokas of the Manushya Loka. Manushya Loka is the sub-loka of the Bhu-loka. So infanthood, childhood, adolescenthood, adulthood, old age, and so on, right? So each of these, some of it we remember, some of it we don't have any memory about. Like some people, they say they even remember their previous lives, the previous birth. So all these realms of experiences, some of which is there in our memory, some of which is not in our memory, they are the loka. And the highest among them is the Brahma Loka. And Bhagavan says that all these worlds are subject to return. They are all subject to what? They are subject to mutation, repetition, because they are under the sway of time, space, cause and effect. All of them. They are bounded by time, by space, and cause and effect. And all the beings in all these lokas are compelled by their karma to be reborn. And Bhagavan says tu. Tu is but. He uses so often in Bhagavad Gita. Tu. Mamupetya tu. But if you come to me. Mamupetya. But if you come to me. But if you have reached me. Punarjanma na vidyate. There is no rebirth for you. There are a couple of varying interpretations of the two statements Bhagavan is making here. It can be a little confusing. So we must go through this verse carefully and read it thoroughly. So Bhagavan is saying, including the realm of Brahma, all are subject to rebirth. Once you go there, you have to come back. And then he says, but after attaining me, there is no rebirth. So one interpretation is to read this exactly as Bhagavan is saying. Just know what I said. That is what Bhagavan says. Just read it like that. And what does Bhagavan say? He says that from Brahma Loka and any other Loka that you are in, whatever realm that may be, which is Apara Prakriti, which is the expression of the Supreme, that Apara Prakriti, you have to return. But on attaining the Para Prakriti, you do not have to return. That is one. The other is, especially if you read the Upanishads and based on analysis of various Upanishads, there is qualification in terms of the kind of upasana or bhakti or worship that we do. Based on the type of upasana that takes one to Brahma Loka, and based on the motive with which this soul is spending time in Brahma Loka. There are two alternatives based on that. So if one reaches Brahmaloka through upasana, through worship, through being absorbed in the worship, like Bhagavan says, right? If one reaches Brahmaloka in that manner, and after reaching there, the motive is bhakti for Bhagavan. The motive continues to be upasana for Bhagavan. Then the person attains the permanent abode of Bhagavan. If the motive in Brahmaloka is bhukti, not bhakti. See, these lokas are very, Swargaloka is Swargaloka. Why do you people say, may you go to heaven? May you rest in peace in heaven? May you reach heaven? Swarg. Why do people wish Swarga for everyone? Because there's a lot of enjoyment. And Brahmaloka is the top, even beyond Swargaloka. Swargaloka is Swaha. Brahmaloka is even 4 steps beyond Swaha. There's a lot of enjoyment. There is a lot of bhoga. There's a lot of beautiful experiences. So if one goes there to enjoy those experiences, then Bhagavan says you come back. So even when you go to Brahmaloka, you continue with your path of devotion, dedicated devotion, absorbed in devotion. The enjoyment seekers there are forced to come back. So Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa said, and I quote, when boiled paddy is sown in the field, it sprouts not. Even so, a perfect person, when that perfect person puts away the body, he is not born again. We will see a little bit of this a little later also. Now, Bhagavan in this verse, please notice, he addresses Arjuna in 2 ways. O Arjuna in the first line and O Kaunteya in the second line. Sanskrit is a beautiful language. There's so much implication the way you talk, the way you address the expressions. So whenever a person's name is taken, it is to call that person's attention. And here, Arjuna represents the one who is working towards achieving the goal for enjoyment of that result. Thus, in the first line, Bhagavan says, O Arjuna, one returns even from Brahmaloka. Kunti, on the other hand, is epitome of devotion. She doesn't want, she says, give me misery. More and more misery, please give me, because when there is misery, Bhagavan is next to me. I don't even have to call him. When there is misery, he automatically presents himself. So please give me more. So epitome of devotion, Kunti. And Bhagavan addresses, O Kaunteya, O son of Kunti, in the second line. You seek me like your mother, and there is no return for you. Now, Bhagavan going further, he elucidates on the time period in regard to evolution and dissolution of the worlds, including the Brahmaloka. I had sent you a clip that I had requested you all to watch before the satsang. Bhagavan actually talks about it here. We'll go through verse 70.
Sahasra Yuga Paryantam
Sahasra Paryantam
Aharyad Brahmano Viduhu
Aharyad Brahmano Viduhu
Ratrim Yuga Sahasrantam
Ratrim Yuga Sahasrantam
Teho Ratra Vido Janaha
Teho Ratra Vido Janaha
Sahasra Yuga Paryantam Aharyad Brahmano Viduhu Ratrim Yuga Sahasrantam Teho Ratra Vido Janaha.
Viduhu, those who understand. Those who understand what? Aharyad. Aharyad is the day of the Brahma. Aharyad Brahmano. Aharyad means day of Brahmano, of Brahma. Those who understand the day of Brahma, that it Sahasra Yuga Paryantam. The day of Brahma ends in 1,000 years. See how beautiful this language is. Those who understand that the day of Brahma ends in 1,000 years. And then he continues, Ratrim, the night. Yuga Sahasrantam, ending in 1,000 years. They, those people, they, Teho Ratra Vidoho. That means they are the knowers of day and night. Aha is day, Ratra is night. So Te Janaha, those people, they know Aha and Ratri. They are the knowers of day and night. Those who understand that the day of Brahma lasts for 1,000 years and the night of Brahma also lasts for another 1,000 years, those people are knowers of day and night.
1,000 yugas.
I'm sorry, 1,000 yugas. Wherever I said year, replace it with yuga. Very, very sorry. Thank you to my mother for correcting me. Those who know that the day of Brahma lasts 1,000 yugas and the night of Brahma lasts for 1,000 yugas, they are the knowers of day and night. Meaning, those who understand, these people, they understand the concept of time and the aspect of relativity. Day and night, concept of time and aspect of relativity. So just to do a quick recap of that video clip that I sent you, as per Hindu cosmology, Ayana refers to the course of the sun. And the 6 months in which the sun moves towards the north is called Uttarayana. And the 6 months where it moves towards the south is called Dakshinayana. The two Ayanas put together is 1 year. And 4,32,000 years make one Kali Yuga. And twice as much as Kali Yuga, which is 8,64,000 years, is Dwapara Yuga. And thrice as much as Kali Yuga, which is 12,96,000 years, is Treta Yuga. And 4 times as much as Kali Yuga, which is 17,28,000 years, is Satya Yuga. And all 4 together are called Chatur Yuga or Mahayuga. And these 4 put together, the 4 spans of time, cover 4,320,000 years. So the Chatur Yuga or the Mahayuga covering 4,320,000 years, that is called Kalpa. And Kalpa is the fundamental cosmic life cycle. And it is 1 day in the life of the creator, Lord Brahma. And that is comprised of 1,000 Mahayugas. When Bhagavan says Yuga in this verse, he is referring to this Kalpa. When Bhagavan says Yuga, we have to understand it as this Mahayuga. And from here, you can actually calculate the life of Brahma, because Brahma is said to live 100 years. So 4,320,000, 4.32 million into 1,000 is 4.32 billion years in terms of human years. Okay, night also consists of 4.32 billion human years. During his day, the universe is there, alive, exists, creation is there. During his night, there is no creation. There is no life. And the age of the Brahma, like I said, is known to be 100 years, which has 360 days and 360 nights. So the total age of Brahma is 360 into 100 into 8.64 billion years, which is 311.04 trillion human years. And this period is called the Mahakalpa, which is the lifespan of the entire universe. Because after this, the Brahma itself is no longer there. This Mahakalpa is also said to be the duration of one breath of Lord Vishnu. Mahavishnu, when he exhales, the entire universe, including Brahma, comes into being. And when he inhales, the entire universe, including Lord Brahma, Brahmaloka, everything is sucked in. So look at this relativity of time, 1 second or exhalation, inhalation of Lord Vishnu to the daytime of Lord Brahma and the nighttime of Lord Brahma. And then additionally, there are a couple of interesting aspects. 15 human days is 1 day for the Pitru, and it's called Shukla Paksha. And 15 human nights is one night for the Pitru called Krishna Paksha. 6 months of the human, the Uttarayana, is the daytime for the Devas. And the 6 months of the humans, which is Dakshinayana, is the one night for the Devas. So look at the relative concept of time that our Shastras, Puranas have established, much before Einstein. So thus time has been explained in terms of relativity. And also that the concept of time and space depend upon individual factors that are governing or controlling them. I mean, we also experience this, right? When we say individual, we don't have to imagine too much to know how this individual factors govern time and space. See, for us, when something we don't like is going on, time hangs. It moves at a snail's pace. When we are anxious, when we are disturbed. But when we are joyful, when we are at peace, then time just flies. We don't even realize. So we can count hours, we can see sunset and moonrise and all those kind of things. But it just hangs. It doesn't feel. Sometimes, when I'm thinking about my uncle, it's like it's weird. The concept of time is very, very weird. When we are sleeping, enjoying in the bliss of sleep, there is no concept of time. So essentially, time is nothing but an interval between two experiences. And our sages and seers, based on these calculations, they base their calculation upon such experiences that they have had in their lives. The poets and the sages and the seers of the Puranas and so on. And they conceived that Bhagavan, God, for him, the clock of time of Bhagavan is much larger. That face, that dial is much larger, that divine watch, that divine clock. And not only that, in the Upanishads, you can also see an ascending scale of joy expressed on these different realms. Like I said, in Swargaloka, we all know, right? There is a much higher scale of joy. Indra and all are supposed to be partying all the time, by the way. And all of that is based on the relative mental equipoise and tranquility of the beings at different levels of existence. And it is also said that Brahma, the creator, is also a Jivatman, having cosmic duties, cosmic functions to fulfill, and wending his way towards moksha or mukti. And that happens when Bhagavan inhales, Vishnu inhales. That Purusha who attains universal power and efficiency. Remember last satsang we talked about Purushas that we talked about Salokya, Samipya, Sayujya. That sometimes based on the karma and based on the way we are devoted and what we achieve, we also acquire the form of the Lord, the 4 hands and 4 heads and so on. We discussed it last time. So this Purusha, the super accomplished Purusha, becomes the next Brahma when that Brahma attains mukti. And this Purusha who has become Brahma has his own day, own night, own wheel of life, birth and death, emancipation, mukti, moksha, all of that. And Bhagavan says, those who understand this cosmic design, they understand what is meant by the wheel of time, the wheel of birth and death, and what is mukti. So it should be all our endeavor to understand this cosmic design, this aspect of day and night of various creatures, from our day and night to Lord Brahma's day and night. Just like our thoughts cease when we go to sleep, they dissolve, they go to pralaya. And then when we wake up, they come flooding back in the morning. Similarly, Bhagavan presents a very fascinating and wonderful concept of creation and dissolution. when how creation comes flooding in and how it dissolves. We'll go to verse 18.
Avyaktadyakta sarvaha
Avyaktadvyakta sarvaha
prabhavantyah ragame
prabhavantyah ragame
ratyagame praliyante
ratyagame praliyante
tatraiva vyakta sanyakah
tatraiva vyakta sanyakah
avyaktadyakta sarvaha prabhavantyah ragame ratyagame praliyante tatraiva vyakta sanyake.
Avyaktad, from the unmanifested. Vyaktaha, the manifest. Sarvaha, all. From the unmanifested, all the manifest. Prabhavanti. Prabhavanti, they arise. When do they arise? Aharagame, at the coming of the day. And Ratriagame, at the coming of the night. They, tatra, praliyante, dissolve. Dissolve into what? And Bhagavan uses the word iva. Iva means surely. In fact, we'll see later, helplessly. Vyakta sanyake, into that which is unmanifest. So from the unmanifested, all the manifested come about. At the coming of the day, at the coming of the night, they all dissolve. And again, at the coming of the day, they all manifest again. So pralaya means dissolution. And every time the day of the Karya Brahma, we use Karya Brahma here because ultimate also is Brahman. No? That term Brahman is also significant or used for the supreme consciousness. So when the day of the Karya Brahman ends, the worlds up to Suvaha, which is what? Atala, Vitala, Sutala, Rasala, Talatala, Mahatala, Patala, Bhuvaha, Suvaha. Suvaha is equal to Swarga. Suvaha is another word of Swarga. So these 10 worlds up to Suvaha, they undergo pralaya. They merge into the Avyakta or the unmanifest. And when the night of the Hiranyagarbha is over and the day starts, the worlds up to Swarga are recreated. This is called Naimittika Pralaya. Naimittika because it is because of a reason. Nimitta. Nimitta means reason. And what is the reason here? The reason is that the night has come. Why do I go to sleep? I go to sleep because the night has come. Because the sleep has come. And most often it is night. Natural is night. Nowadays 24/7 there's a different story, but natural is night. So Bhagavan Brahma, Lord Brahma's night has come. That reason, Nimitta, causes Naimittika Pralaya. The plan of the nature is the same, both in terms of the macrocosm and the microcosm. And in accordance with this plan, the Karya Brahma goes to sleep. And when the Karya Brahma goes to sleep, the world that is projected from the Karya Brahman's mind, we say no, that the world is nothing but a projection of our mind. The entire creation is nothing but the projection of Karya Brahman's mind. That world, that creation which is projected from his mind gets withdrawn into the Karya Brahman and comes into being when the Brahman wakes up. Now this is about the locus. Bhagavan has talked about the locus. Now he talks about bhutas, the beings, in the next verse.
Bhutagramasa evayam
Bhutagramasa evayam
bhutva bhutva praliyate
Bhutva bhutva praliyate
ratyagame vashapartha
Ratryagameva Shappartha
prabhavatyah ragame
Prabhavatyah ragame
भूतग्राम स एवायं भूत्वा भूत्वा प्रलीयते रात्र्यागमे वशः पार्थ प्रभवत्यः रागमे.
So Bhagavan says, surely eva, all this, sayam, all this who? Bhutagrama, multitude of beings. Grama means collection. This collection of beings, all this collection of beings, the multitude of beings, all of them, bhutva bhutva, they being born again and again and again and again, being manifest again and again and again. Praliyate, and dissolve. They manifest, dissolve, manifest, dissolve, manifest, dissolve. And then he says, Ratriagame, at the coming of the night, Avashaha. Avashaha means helpless. O Partha, they are helpless. And Prabhavatya, they come forth again, Aharagame, at the coming of the day. So surely all these multitude of beings are being born again and again and dissolve at the coming of the night helplessly, O Partha, and come forth again when the day arises. It's an endless cycle in relative terms of manifestation and unmanifestation. Avashaha, helplessly. When the time comes to become part of the manifest or to become part of the unmanifest, there is no choice. Beings are helpless. The free will of this human being that we are all aware of is actually, beyond a point, a misnomer. It has its boundaries. Free will has its boundaries. Within those, for us to do our duty, that the first section of Bhagavad Gita, there free will is very valid. Then to do Abhyasa Yogena, free will is very valid. But beyond a point, it's a misnomer. We don't even have the freedom to keep awake or go to sleep as per our wish beyond a certain limit. We can try that, but beyond a limit, come what may, we'll be dozing off. Beyond a limit, come what may, we will be waking up. Much more so helplessly, the multitude of human beings, as much as we are helpless to go to sleep and helpless to come back awake, much more so, much bigger, much more helplessly, these multitude of beings are dragged into unmanifest state and thrown back into manifest state based on when the Brahma goes to sleep or when Brahma is waking up. They are bound by their karma, both in terms of the event of going and coming, as well as the duration of stay in whichever loka they are in. Both when they come, when they go, how long they are in the loka, all of this avashaha, and are bound by karma. Like a small piece of wood that is caught in the wave in the ocean and goes up and down and up and down and up and down endlessly and ceaselessly. Of course, until mukti. And Bhagavan will come to that in a bit. But even though we are aware of this more or less, but more often than not, human beings get drawn towards samsara. And that attachment to samsara results in karma, which then results in this avashaha state of helplessness that Bhagavan is talking about. There is the story of Dhruva. Dhruva, after he became king. Dhruva, we all know, we covered a story earlier also in one of the satsang in Polestar, right? This Dhruva, after he became king, Bhagavan asked him, Dhruva, come, please come to heaven. It's time. See, for some special Mahatmas, Bhagavan himself will ask, he won't send Yama, his emissary. Right? Please come to heaven, it's time. Dhruva says, sure, Bhagavan, but there are also a few people who are very deserving. Can I call them? Bhagavan says, more the merrier, please get them along. So Dhruva goes. Nobody wants to go with Dhruva. Somebody says, oh, I have my duty to fulfill. My office is expecting this tomorrow morning. I have to return. Then I have to complete my job. Then my son is going to engineering. I have to make sure that my daughter is married. So nobody wants to leave. So people get magnetically drawn to this samsara. Life is like this giant, being on a giant, we have all done this giant wheel, no? Mela mein, that giant wheel. We feel like getting down when we are at the top, because of that breath of air. And after some time, all that your head goes round and round, chakkar aa raha hai, all of that, the lungs in the air in the lungs and all of that. We say, oh, this is the last round, I'm getting down. And then you come down and say, okay, one more last round. Life is like that. You want to go back again. Similarly, when there is dukkha, we are saying, let all this end. Bahut ho gaya. God, please, bahut ho gaya. Let all this end, take me. And then there is sukha, and we'll be like, no, let it continue. In fact, there's a beautiful doha. Dukh mein sumiran sab kare, sukh mein kare na koi. Jo sukh mein sumiran kare, dukh kahe ko hoye Kabira, dukh kahe ko hoye. Beautiful song by Kabir. And it is said that the best loka for realization is the Manushya loka within the Bhuloka. Because only in human life, there is a balance of punya and papa equally. They get balanced out. They are equally matched. There is enough sadness to enable dispassion or vairagya. And there is enough joy to result in equanimity or samatvam. All other lokas, including Swarga Loka, there's too much joy. So there's no balance. So there is more chance of getting bound. So it is said that Manushya Loka is the best to whatever Bhagavan keeps saying, my supreme abode, to attain that supreme abode. This is the best loka. And Bhagavan now, he makes us aware of that ever permanent platform. Now all this, even up to Brahma Loka, temporary, ephemeral. Even though it is so many trillion years, right? The life of the Brahma. But still ephemeral. But that permanent platform upon which all the entities play this drama of manifestation and unmanifestation. He makes us aware in the next two verses. We'll go through one by one. Verse 20.
Parastasmatu bhavonyo.
Parastasmastu bhavonyo.
Vyakto vyaktat sanatanaha.
Vyakto vyaktat sanatanaha.
Yasa sarveshu bhuteshu.
Yasa sarveshu bhuteshu.
Nashyatsu na vinashyati.
Nashyatsu na vinashyati.
Parastasmatu bhavonyo. Vyakto vyaktat sanatanaha. Yasa sarveshu bhuteshu. Nashyatsu na vinashyati.
Again two. Bhagavan says two, but parastasmat two. Parastasmat, but higher than that. Higher than what? Higher than the Karya Brahma. Higher than the Avyakta. Higher than the Hiranyagarbha. Is what Bhagavan is going to talk about. There are different types of pralaya. The different types of pralaya, number one, Nitya pralaya. Nitya pralaya is something that we experience on a daily basis. Happens in our life, in the realm of the individual. What I just talked about, the sleep and the waking cycle. Like the thoughts that dissolve when we go to sleep and come flooding back when we are awake. That is Nitya pralaya, daily pralaya. Then there is Naimittika pralaya, which we just saw. Happens at the start of the night of the creator. It is caused by Nimitta, the reason. And all the worlds up to Swarga are impacted. Suvaha or Swarga. And then there is Prakritika pralaya. Prakritika Pralaya means that everything dissolves into Prakriti. Even the higher worlds. See, we said up in Naimittika Pralaya up to Suvaha. Here, the higher worlds also. The Mahaha, Janaha, Tapaha. All of them are dissolved into the Brahmaloka, into Brahma. And then the final one is the Atyantika Pralaya, which is the ultimate dissolution, including the Brahmaloka. Everything gets dissolved. That is at the end of the life of Brahma. Only Bhagavan remains. And Bhagavan says Avyaktat. Avyaktat means than that unmanifested. Higher than that Hiranyagarbha, higher than that Para Avyaktat. The Hiranyagarbha is called Avyakta because it is into the Hiranyagarbha, which all the Vyakti denotes the creation, all of it dissolves. So Bhagavan says Paraha, higher than that Hiranyagarbha, more supreme. Anya, very different, nothing else that is like it in creation. Bhavaha, the pure existence, the reality. Avyakto Vyaktat, that is unmanifest relative to the unmanifest. See the beautiful expression here. The unmanifest relative to the unmanifest. It's like light relative to light. So I can see light in my room and I can see a brighter light outside, but it's so cloudy and rainy. When the sun comes out, even more brighter light. So the unmanifest relative to the unmanifest. Avyakto Vyaktat. That which is unmanifest relative to the unmanifest. And Bhagavan says Sanatanaha, eternal, ever permanent, that which is beyond time. And this supreme eternal reality, Bhagavan says, Yasa sarveshu bhuteshu nashyatsu na vinashyati. This supreme eternal reality is not destroyed when all beings, all of creation are destroyed. As in the existence of things, there are two aspects or two grids or two phases, relative and the absolute. For example, water exists as vapor, it exists as mist, it exists as fog, exists as snow. And when all of these perish, when fog perish, when snow perish, when steam perish, when vapor perishes, snow perishes, water remains. So water's persistence is absolute existence of that water. And this relative existence is the existence of these elements which are made up of water. Similarly, Brahma, the creator, and all creation of Brahma are relative existences of this absolute supreme reality that is eternal. And Bhagavan has given us the knowledge of various ways to reach him, to reach his state. And Bhagavan says, we'll conclude this satsang with the last verse. Bhagavan says, thereafter, after reaching there, he says in verse 21,
Avyaktokshara ityuktaha
Avyaktokshara ityuktaha
Tamahu paramam gatim
Tamahu paramam gatim
Yam prapya na nivartante
Yam prapya na nivartante
Tadhama paramam mama
Tadhama paramam mama.
Avyaktokshara ityuktaha Tamahu paramam gatim Yam prapya na nivartante Tadhama paramam mama.
Avyaktokshara ityuktaha, that which is called unmanifest, that which is called imperishable. Avyakto, unmanifest, akshara, imperishable. Tamahu, which means they say, paramam gatim is the highest goal, the supreme destination. Here, avyaktaha refers to what? Refers to the paraha, that previous verse Bhagavan talked about, the sanatana that he talked about, the bhavaha, the supreme eternal reality that Bhagavan mentioned in the previous verse, that unmanifest, not that relative unmanifest of Brahmaloka or Lord Brahma. This permanent, supreme eternal reality unmanifest, that is what he's talking about here. And he says that is our actual home. Our current homes where we are only temporary. They are not even our real home. The problem with getting comfortable here in these homes, which are temporary homes, is that it makes us complacent. For example, when freedom fighting was, the momentum, it gained momentum. A lot of people said, why this freedom fighting and all? It's all fine, life is good. But guess what? They were not free. They were subjects of the British. They were not free. We can be subjects of samsara, but freedom is better than this, being subject of samsara. Being a subject of samsara, being a slave of samsara, we are not free. Fortunate are those who have got freedom from this slavery of samsara. And Bhagavan says, Yam prapya na nivartante. They who reach it never return. Tad dhama paramam mama. This is my highest abode. Tad dhama, dhama. That is my abode. Paramam, supreme, highest. So with prayers that Srinivasan Sheshadri, my mama, and Uncle Daljit Singh have reached this supreme abode that Bhagavan is talking about. This supreme resting place of Bhagavan. We come to conclusion. Hari Om.
Repeat our verses from 15 to 21. Mamupetya punarjanma dukkhalayam ashashvatam napnuvanti mahatmanah samsiddhim paramam gataha abrahma bhuvana lokaha punaravartinurjuna mamupetya tu kaunteya punarjanma na vidyate Sahasrayugaparyantam ahadvad brahmano viduhu ratrim yuga sahasrantam teho ratravido janaha avyakta sarvaha prabhavantyah ragame ratyagame praliyante tatreva vyakta sanyake bhutagramasa evayam Bhutva bhutva praliyate ratyagame vashapartha prabhavatya haratame parastasmatu bhavonyo vyakto vyaktat sanatanaha yasa sarveshu bhuteshu nashyastu na vinashyati avyaktoksara ityukta tamahu paramam gatim samprapya nanikanti tadhama paramam mama. Sadoma sadgamaya tahasoma upirgamaya mrityorma mritangamaya Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadhaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Guru Namaha Harihi Om.
Hari Om. Any thoughts, comments, questions?
Hello.
Hello, Jerry sir.
Yeah, I was just wanting, the cycle of birth and rebirth, and you get into human cycle after going through all the births of different kinds. That is animals and all that. And animals don't have any means of attaining moksha. You have to go through that cycle. So that means it is sequential. That means you are born as a monkey, then maybe as a lion and things like this, and you don't have any control over it. So there would be a very sequential cycle right from unicell, from a worm down to a lion or the last form before you're born as human being. And you don't have any control. But when you're born as a human being, Some are born better, some are born less. So that means in the birth of human being, how is it decided? That in the last birth, I just presuming, say it was a lion, and then you become human. Now in the lion, how does one decide that you will be born poor, you will be born rich, you will be born rishi? Or is it again a cycle in the human birth where it starts off from a lower level and you go through the upper level? And the saying is that if you don't do your karma, you go back to the cycle of into the animal or some other kind of things. How is it? What sequence does it follow?
So it's
And how do you control it?
Sure. Thank you, Jerry sir. See, if we start thinking about the lion or the microorganism, so when we think in those terms, which are the bhutvas, the beings and objects, right? Then it kind of is a little bit confusing. But the minute we think of this journey as a soul journey, it's the journey of the soul. It is the karma that the soul has accumulated and the soul is redeeming. When you think of it like that, then it makes sense. Then it all comes into place. So in fact, it is said that there was one, remember Bhagavan says in one of the previous verses that the last thought is what you manifest into. There is a story, I don't remember the name of the rishi, but there is a story of a rishi whose last thought was that of a deer, and he came back as a deer. Jadabharatan came back as a deer. But that doesn't mean that he was not evolved and, probably after that birth of that deer, he would have attained moksha, mukti. So it is the soul journey. It is the soul that is the one which is going through these cycles, not that particular being that is going through these cycles. So this entire quote unquote bank account that we talked about, that belongs to the soul, that does not belong to the being. JV sir, hope that answered your question, the soul journey.
It is a little tricky to understand, but somewhat, yes. I'm still not able to comprehend the whole thing.
Thoda, maybe you just dwell on this yourself. Or maybe I'll spend some time discussing this in one of the other sessions. Because then we'll have to discuss the aspect of karma. Prarabdha karma, sanchita karma, agami karma, wo sab discuss karenge. Maybe then how that gets accumulated on that soul journey. Maybe all of that, but that will take time.
Okay, I'll wait for that. Sometime when you do discuss, maybe it will become clear.
Srini, Hari Om, I have one thing, Kushagra this side. So I had read somewhere that even in the higher lokas, there are, the positions, like suppose we say that once a soul is liberated from the material, the human world, it goes to higher lokas. So I had read somewhere that even there, like they are not static, what we were discussing. They might again descend or, they might again come down to the human loka. So can you throw some light on what are the vices or what are the papa karmas that exist there that can downgrade the souls again to the human world?
So, see, first of all, I will not put it like, there is a downgrade or an upgrade. In the sense it is true, but it is a journey, it is a cycle, it is a journey. Now, like we said, that it is well known, commonly known, and I think it can also be deciphered that the human life is the life where there is equal amount of papa and punya that is experienced by the human being, and because of which one can have purushartha or human goals and work towards these aspects. It is said that the human being is the one who is willing to take time out to understand. Even in the Devaloka, people are so absorbed in their various aspects that they are doing that they may not get time to absorb in these kind of jnana or learning. In human loka, in the bhuloka, manushya loka, we are able to get this learning, and then combined with devotion, we are able to achieve the moksha, liberation, up to the limit that we have earned it. Okay. Now, let us say, like, to coming to your question, you go to Swargaloka. Swargaloka, like they say, one is how you went there, based on what kind of, the Upanishads talk about the various types of devotion, okay, and how you got there. Some aspects of devotion earn you that mukti, some earn you the bhakti, some aspects of devotion earn you the bhukti, which means that once you go to that loka, you are either enjoying the beautiful aspects of that loka, all the enjoyments of that, the joys and the avenues through which you can get that enjoyment, you are getting it to your full satiation. And once that has happened, after eons again, once that has happened, or when that loka itself perishes, you come back. Simply because it is said that you were there doing only enjoyment. Same thing holds in Bhuloka also. If we are all following a spiritual pursuit, okay? We are philosophically inclined. There are people who are not philosophically inclined. They are not following a spiritual pursuit. So for them, it is said that they will need another janma to come back and over a period of time, get philosophically, spiritually inclined. Similarly, you go to Swargaloka, enjoy all of the aspects there, then you come back, and when you come back, like we saw earlier, you come back in a better household, a household which is prosperous and inclined towards spirituality, a household where there are lots of sages and yogas who are already yogis who are already there, under whose guidance you can spend your lifetime. Like Abhi sir wrote in the message, you get a good guru, the guru comes to you, or you seek and find that guru, whichever way it works, right? So you get that benefit of that journey. It's like a bank balance that is accumulating, more and more and more credit based on your karma. More the credit, better the journey. Ultimately, that takes you towards devotion. See, ultimately, even in bank financial aspect, they say, kitna paisa kama loge. Finally, you say, theek hai, paisa doesn't mean much, no? You think of other aspects other than money, even after you have earned millions and billions of dollars. In fact, we see that sometimes people who have earned those millions and billions of dollars are more equipoised in their outlook. Finally, it goes towards full absorption into Bhagavan as devotees. Full devotion. That full bhakti, that entire full bhakti, complete devotion, like that Rasagulla which has got dipped into the syrup. Full, every pore is devoted. That leads to an ultimate mukti. So even in Brahmaloka, or even in Swarga, if you are devoted, if your purpose there is devotion, then you attain the final mukti. If your purpose there, or if your occupation there is enjoyment, you come back.
Perfect, Srini. Thank you. Makes sense.
So the more we spend time being devoted, the better. And earlier in Karma Yoga, Bhagavan talked about how devotion and Ishvara Arpana enables us to do even our day-to-day worldly job also better. Like so many examples we have talked about from my mama. Every time you tell, Srinivasan ji says, "To Federer ke alawa aur koi example nahi milta." That's what he'll tell me. Like our project. You devote yourself to the higher cause, and your task that you are performing attains that element of quality and perfection. So the devotion is the element that enables you to get more and more and more and more perfect till that point of ultimate perfection.
Yes, thank you. Hari Om.
So Abhi sir is asking, is often suggested that one needs a guru or an initiator to achieve best results in meditation. Yeah. Abhi sir, you're asking if a guru will help in meditation. Yes, absolutely. I mean, in every stage of spiritual pursuit, as we are going, in fact, I may even offline, because you were not there as part of satsang at that time. We went through the spiritual path from the beginning till the end, from starting from the stage of performing karma to the stage of Jivan Mukti and Videha Mukti also. So every stage of the spiritual path, if there is a guru, it is absolutely beneficial. But again, in today's world, the caution is it's very important to find the right kind of guru. Because if you get a wrong type of guru, then you get misguided. And then you're not pursuing the right pursuit as advised. And nowadays, guru galore. From Google onwards to human beings to everywhere, there is guru galore. So in that guru galore, for us to be able to sift and find the right guru, that's why they say, if you are accomplished enough, the guru will come to you. So hopefully the right guru makes the presence, and we learn in the right manner. But yes, the guru in any stage of spiritual pursuit, if that guidance is there, you proceed faster and you proceed in a better manner.
He may not guide you directly, but he will show the path for your.
So sometimes my mother is saying, sometimes guru may not even be there to guide you directly, but the path manifests.
Shankaracharya, Madhva, Vishishta, Ramanuja, we have so many mudds. Those mudds of the heads, if you have deep faith in them and just pray, you will be answered. All your prayers, all your doubts will be answered, as Krishna is there for Arjuna. And he will show us the right path.
We have to be careful. A good student knows when to leave the guru also. That's also equally important. Like if you are going from grade 5 to grade 6, or if you're going from school to college, you have to respectfully bid adieu to your guru and embrace the new guru. And at some stage in life, you have to find your own way. If you have learned surgery, the guru is not going to come and help you in the operation table. You have to perform the surgery. So each one of us has to know when to. Guru is a scaffolding. Ultimately, the soul and Bhagwan, and it is up to the individual to give up the individuality and embrace the feet of the Lord. Kushagra, you can even recite you're saying auntie's words reminds of the shloka on positive direction. You can recite yourself.
Yeah, sure, Srini. As a child, I used to read this, and my parents used to always, focus on this one. It says that Guru Gobind dono khade, kake lagu paaye, balihari Guru aapne jin Gobind diyo dikhaye, which in turn means that there is a Guru in the human form and there is Gobind, which is the God. That there are both. Whom should I bow down to? So I would prefer the Guru who is the direction towards God and would lead me in a more righteous path.
Absolutely. But at some stage, you have to leave the Guru and go to God.
Yes,
Guru, they say Guru himself will take you.
Sir.
Yes, sir. Yeah, why?
Internal curiosity of the disciple is very essential. If internal curiosity, called jigyasa, is not there, then I'm sorry, the teachings of Guru will just merge water into water. Nothing will be absorbed. Internal curiosity is an essential prerequisite requirement for learning from the Guru. Then secondly, the teachings of Guru can be absorbed when we have got a peaceful, tranquil mind, not a restless, turbulent mind. A peaceful, tranquil, stable mind absorbs the valuable teachings of the teacher. That's my submission.
Thank you very much, sir. That is true. And in Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavan actually teaches us how to acquire that tranquil mind.
Sir, Srinivasan was my friend. Srinivasan Sheshadri was my friend. And it was he who introduced me to your satsang.
Thank you, sir.
Sir,
Tanuja ji, you are saying something.
I want to share just little experience of Guru in my life. Like we have spiritual gurus as we move on in life, but I feel whatever I wanted to learn in life, maybe any skill or anything, if I did not follow my guru, there were various types of gurus, but listen until I could feel the soul of that subject, I couldn't learn that trick or whatever I was trying to learn. So my experience of guru is, one is spiritual guru. And when I look back at life, I feel I had so many gurus in different stages of life to sail through. Like whether you go to the gym or you learn painting or you learn cooking, or maybe so many things we have to do in life. So guru in small way or big way is very, very important. That is my experience. So I'm sharing. To feel the soul in everything is important. Is that also manifestation of God? That skill or whatever?
Absolutely. In fact, Bhagavan talks about Abhyasa, right? See, Bhagavan talks about Abhyasa, and Bhagavan again and again and again talks about how we have to be devoted to him. And his way of giving us Abhyasa to ultimately devote to him is to be able to devote to this multitude of gurus that we get. Right from our parents at home to our school, first grade onwards, nursery onwards to 12th, then our college guru, then our various other facets, whether you're learning cooking or knitting or cricket or whatever, sport guru, music guru, and so many gurus. And different people. My mother talked about G.R. Swami, our pontiff. Kushagra talked about Guru Gobind Ji. Gobind, of course, Guru Gobind is also a guru, and Gobind, he referred to Bhagavan. But all Bhagavan in his own imitable manner is giving us practice through these gurus to ultimately perfect devotion.
Okay. Thank you.
So that when we practice devotion towards him, it is of high quality.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no other thoughts or comments, it's 5:40. We can say Hari Om and we'll meet next Saturday, praying for Srinivasan Sheshadriji and uncle. Like Bhagavan said in the end, may they have reached his ultimate supreme abode. Hari Om.